Hello, everyone. This is Prometheus Community and Ecosystem Meeting. I am Pavlas Versatskas, and I work for a company called Utility Warehouse. We have Matthias, who is another co-host.
Hey, everyone. I work for Red Hat, based in Berlin. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So this call is going to be recorded and published on YouTube. We follow Prometheus Code of Conduct here. So please be nice to one another, and let's begin with Prometheus announcements. Frederick, are you ready?
Yes.
Is it recorded? Or?
Yeah, it's recorded, yeah. I'm going to be put on YouTube.
So the first release candidate of v2.11 is targeted to be released today. So I already prepared the changelog yesterday. If you haven't seen the pull request for that, I can link it in the meeting notes. It's actually a rather small release this time. We only have 5 small features. Maybe I'll highlight those real quick. So we can now use external labels in alert unit testing. We can do globs instead of single files for alert unit testing. The Alertmanager v2 API can be used for firing alerts. So that's pretty cool. I'd recommend everyone to start using that. Then there's a new thing to do a new function in alert templates so that you can convert percentages into human readable percentages more easily. And init containers are now available in Kubernetes Service Discovery. Then there are a bunch of enhancements in terms of performance in PromQL and TSDB. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. For more details, check out the pull request. I'm going to link it right now.
Cool. If anyone
to use the release candidate and test away. Yes, please check these out and give us feedback on them. We already know that there are 2 small issues with them, but yeah, please test them out.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions? You can put those on Prometheus IRC or on document. Let's quickly check the document. Cool, I guess no question. Sorry?
So Simon would be next now if there are no questions.
Yeah.
We do have one in the chat though. I don't know if that's new. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dominic, we posted it in the document in the official one, the link to the pull request. If that's what you're asking.
So yeah, that's me. So Simon, part of the Prometheus team and working for Red Hat 2. We are also planning a release of the Alertmanager that will be the version 0.18. The last version was a couple of months ago, so we decided to, with the other maintainers, to try to be to release more often. So just like Prometheus, so that we don't have a large delay between every release, so that it's easier for people to update from one to another. This release is also quite small. That will mostly be bug fixes, a few breaking changes. So you need to look at the change log that will be for configuration of a PagerDuty receiver and also Opgenie receiver. So if you use those, be aware that some configuration fields have changed. And the other improvements are mostly on the UI, where now the alerts will be grouped by the alert groups. So previously they were listed all together with no real grouping, and now that will be grouped by the using the configuration of the Alertmanager, which is quite nice. I guess that's it. If again, that will be announced on the Prometheus announced list for the release candidate and for the final version. That's all for me.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions about Alertmanager release? Please put them in chat or on the document. Let's wait a bit. Cool, nobody is typing, so let's move on to Bartek.
Yeah, yep, hello. I'm Bartek. I'm, I think, the newest Thanos maintainer. Just joined literally last month, I guess. I work for Improbable from London, and I would like to quickly raise awareness of the different behavior of kind of memory release model for that affects Prometheus. Essentially, the Golang team introduced in the newer version a different memory release logic, and it is actually relevant because we, from Prometheus 2.9, we are using this new Golang versions, and especially applications built with the newer Golang has visibly higher reported memory usage on Linux. That's what you can observe. So in some cases, it can look like a memory leak or like full saturation of the memory resource, because it might be reserved as much as the limit is given. But what is happening under the hood is actually because of this different memory release logic in Golang, which was done for the optimization purposes. The sum of this memory reported is actually available for other processes in the system, and they are just reserved for Golang process because there is no other memory pressure on the system. That's why it's super visible on Docker containers, because, well, Golang is the main process running there, so there is no other memory pressure from that side. So if you used to look in your dashboards and use, you know, metrics like CAdvisor metrics, for example, like container memory usage bytes or container memory RSS, they kind of hide this fact, what is actually cached, what is actually used. I would recommend to change to container memory working set bytes. It's still not very precise, but it gives you kind of the idea when process will be about to but if you really want to check how much memory is allocated for that, for example, on the heap, yeah, you look on the memory allocation bytes metrics from Golang process directly. Anyway, if you are seeing extraordinary memory usage after rolling Prometheus or any other project in ecosystem, because probably all of us moved to new Golang, before submitting issue, and because you are seeing the full saturation, check what metrics you are using, especially if there is like full saturation and there is no there is nothing to worry about, and most likely you are using this metric which has confusing behavior. So yeah, we have many users that on both Prometheus and Thanos that were a bit scared and submitting issue first, and actually they were just hitting this. So just be aware of this happening. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions? As always, you can submit them on IRC or put them on Google document, or you can actually speak up if you want. Cool, checking document. Yeah, doesn't look like anyone is typing. Okay, yeah, chat is also empty. Cool, let's move on to ecosystem announcements. And we have Grafana folk.
Yeah, shall I get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I have just a short demo of a little bit what's new in Grafana and what we've been working on, and we'll release soon. So let me share my screen and see. Let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So to start with, just sort of a quick run through of what we released in the previous version. If you haven't checked it out, released a new panel, first time in a long time in the new bar gauge. That is really useful for things like a Prometheus instant query, just looking at the latest data in a very kind of combined compact format. It's also possible with the new multi-series kind of gauge panel that also looks exactly like the old gauge, but you can now with a single query show multiple gauges. Another thing that we added that is kind of this lazy loading of panels that load as they come into view. This is pretty good to reduce the sort of the overall spikiness of queries. So instead of loading or issuing 30 queries, if you have 30 panels or more on a dashboard, as you open it, it will only issue queries for all the panels that are visible. So this will kind of reduce the spikiness in the load on your time series backend. So that was just a quick run through of the things, some of the highlights, at least the demoable highlights in the past release. So in the last couple of weeks, we were working on one thing that is related to Prometheus, and that is in the Explore mode, we've had this this query editor that has been for Prometheus that has looks a bit different and behaves a bit different from the query editor that is in dashboard view. And these are now kind of merged, and we are using the same query editor you have in Explore is now also being used in the actual dashboard view. So if I go to a dashboard and create a panel here and then specify my Prometheus data source, the same query editor is now used here as well. You do have these additional options that you don't have in Explore, like step, resolution, and instant, but otherwise it should behave, the autocomplete behavior should be exactly the same. There are a couple of bug fixes and fixes related to Prometheus as well, but they're kind of hard to demo. The other things that we have worked on is improving Explore, and especially the logging features in Explore we added previously. So our logging data source, Loki, now supports live streaming. So I can sort of enable live streaming here, and logs will kind of show up as they come in. That might not be the best. Yeah, I don't have a good demo there, but it can sometimes just flood if you're not careful. But this live streaming feature is a feature both in Loki and in Grafana. And another thing that we're working on is adding more support for the logs feature to other data sources. So if you pair Prometheus with Elasticsearch for logs, you can now use the logs feature in Grafana with Elasticsearch and InfluxDB. So that's also something that is coming in 6.3. So the things I'm demoing now is things that are coming in 6.3. We hope to do a beta of 6.3 next week. Other things that we're adding is a drill down feature for the graph panel. So this has been a kind of popular feature request to be able to actually click on a data point and go to another dashboard or go to another system and preserve the information of the data point you actually clicked on. And this is something that you can now do through a graph feature, and this is a feature we'll add to other panels as well as time goes on. But now you can actually click on a data point and have access to these links that can refer to the series name you're clicking and to the time point. This is useful for going to another dashboard with a more detailed view, or to another system and preserve the series name or the tag or the time range or the time point that you actually clicked on as well. So that's some of the highlights. We also have a new time picker that is a bit sort of easier to use, but that's mostly just a UX improvement and nothing kind of big. My 5 minutes is up. That's some of the highlights coming next week.
Awesome. Does the community have any questions about Grafana new release?
I have one question. I'm not sure if, I mean, essentially my question is lazy loading. Like this is kind of great feature. How it works with the refresh? If you have like, you know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it does work for the. We have two panel architectures. So some of the new panels, like the bar gauge and gauge, are using our new React architecture, and those panels will not be refreshed even if they're out of view. And you sort of, let's say you have an auto refresh every 5 seconds. But sadly, that feature doesn't work fully, I think, for the Angular panel. So even if you have, so the lazy loading for the old graph panel, for example, if you have an auto refresh enabled and you scroll down, I think all panels will execute even though they're not in view. But I think that's something we can improve on later.
Mm-hmm. And what's the long-term plan? So essentially the long-term plan is to have refresh on every panel and then have this lazy loading working on everywhere as well, right?
Yeah, the lazy loading works on every panel. It's just if I now enable the, let's say, sort of auto refresh every 5 seconds, that's still gonna execute graphs, graph queries, I think, that are out of view at the top. But I'm not actually 100% sure. That was the case when we developed this initially, but I'm not sure if they managed to solve that or not.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, this is fine.
Yeah.
I'm interested in, is that a feature that some graphs are not refreshable, or can I even, as a user, disable some panels as they're not refreshable or things like that? But yeah, it would be nice to know that something will be not refreshed or things like that. But otherwise, if the long-term plan is to have everything working with refresh, then fine.
Yeah, no, everything everything should default work. It's the lazy loading is enabled by default. There's no setting for it right now. We might add a setting for it to disable it. But yeah, the basic idea is to not issue queries for things that are not visible, and then issue query as you scroll them into view.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Cool. Looks like no questions. Let's move on to. Oh wait, we have one question. Anyway, we can, I guess, tackle it later. Let's move on to questions. So we have Alexander asking questions. Maybe you are live and want to ask them now. Yeah, I don't think he's live, but let's take one question from him and then move on with other people questions. Collecting metrics from Prometheus operating running in multiple Kubernetes clusters. I'm not sure how to answer that. Anyone wants to?
I mean, the question is somewhat vague, but I can talk a little bit about what some people have done in this kind of a scenario. So basically, there are two major things that people do. To do multi-cluster monitoring, essentially, is the problem here, right? And the Prometheus operator is just an implementation detail of what people do, but the solution to this actually is possible in any kind of Prometheus setup, which would be, there are probably two ways to do this. You can use some remote write endpoint and write your data into some sort of a central store. And there are various projects out there. I think pretty much all of them are listed on the integrations page on the Prometheus on Prometheus.io. So check that out. And I think Thanos is the other one that's kind of unique, that doesn't use remote write, and instead it has an architecture where a querier can be deployed somewhere, and the courier needs access to each Prometheus server, and next to each Prometheus server you put a sidecar that queries that Prometheus server, and that way you can get global view. Yeah, I think those are the two major approaches that we've seen.
Is that supported in Prometheus operator too?
Yes, so the Prometheus operator has actually some deeper integration into Thanos itself, but also allows configuring remote write endpoints to replicate your data to one of those solutions. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And if you're interested in those things, I'd recommend to just check out the API docs. And if you search for the keywords that I just said, remote write or Thanos, you will be able to find what you're looking for in those docs. And if not, feel free to ask and open an issue on the Prometheus operator repo.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, I think let's move on because some people asked questions live. So let's move on to some other questions, and then we can come back to Alexander's questions if we have time. So the question is, remote read protocol and global view, is it okay to fetch data via remote read if this data was stored there by third-party Prometheus instances? Does anyone have any idea?
Who asked this question? Is this person maybe in the room?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think it'd be useful if people would be, because I think this one also leaves room for interpretation.
I think all these questions are actually asked by the same person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then I guess, are there questions from anybody on this call?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't seem like that.
Cool.
Sorry, there's a question in the chat. It says, Martin says the last question in the list is his.
Okay, let's answer the last question. Maybe, do you want to ask it live? If you're available. Cool, let's just read it out. I noticed that heat maps with prom histograms do not sort the plus infinity correctly. I use a replace to make it a high number so that it's the top value. Is this a known bug?
I guess this is a question towards Grafana.
Can you repeat that?
You can read the question in the agenda document, but the question is, I noticed that heat maps with Prometheus histograms do not sort the plus infinity correctly. I use a replace to make it a high number so that it's the top value. Is this a known bug?
Not that I know of, but it could be.
Cool. So yeah, basically what to do about it. I think like just make an issue. How do you, Grafana, for example?
Yeah, that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, cool. So just create an issue if it's a known bug. Anyway, I think Grafana folks will help you.
Yeah.
Cool. We have another question going live. Grafana extended query editor. In Graph panel adds, I think it still adds suggestions. Does it also add suggestion and queries? Because it's a bit hard to read because it's going still live. So let's wait a bit for a person to complete. Cool. So I think the question is already there. So yeah, the question is to the Grafana folks, extended query editor in the graph panel adds suggestion. Does it also add suggestions to aggregation queries? Also because it does not add time range to the query and can take down the Prometheus and Thanos data source.
Yeah, I think with the related, it does add suggestions or I mean auto completions, But and regarding to the time range in the sort of meta queries to get suggestions, we have an open issue to add the time range. It wasn't 100% clear if all the APIs supports that, at least since we are kind of dealing with 3 different implementations as well with Prometheus APIs. The question was sort of does all the sort of get label values and get the metric names and get label keys, does all those APIs support start and end? That's kind of a bit of an open question right now, but we have a PR open to add range to all these queries.
Hi, the question was for me. Do you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the pull request is opened by me. I'm solving that issue. I'm just afraid, should I upgrade or not? Because right now, if somebody opens the Explorer mode, it takes down my Thanos cluster completely, unfortunately. And that's why I opened the PR, but I'm not sure if I can upgrade to the new version. Does it add this feature, add this query to every graph panel or not?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, I can check it out myself. I just, if you know. Okay, thanks. That's all.
Cool. Awesome. I guess we can continue with Alexander's questions if there is no other questions in chat. Yeah, no questions in chat. Okay, the next question was collecting metrics from geographically spread Prometheus instances scattered across the globe.
I mean, what's the question, right? Is it about latency or the way of doing it? I think it's kind of vague.
For me, it sounds like the question we previously answered already. That was kind of answered by Frederick like 5 minutes ago. So yeah, I think we can how. Otherwise be in the call and be a bit more specific, I'd say.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's move on. And the next one is also like a bit tricky. I think we can guess what he meant. Essentially, sidecar and remote write, what is better to use for ingesting data? So essentially, sidecar, he means Thanos sidecar. But only remote write is kind of ingesting into another system. So sidecar is only querying the data, so that's not this apple and orange kind of comparison. And what is better, like in what dimension, in what? So I'm not sure how to answer that. It's super different, and I think the answer is that you either query the data, so you need the access to the leaves, or you push the data from Prometheus and live with the maybe some limitations, or if you have enough resources to maintain the stream of samples, which were very improved recently, to another system and use that centralized system. And exactly, we talked about it initially, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on your situation, and I think most important is what Bartek said. If you have access to the leaves, it may be beneficial, but it totally depends on your situation. I think there can be situations where each solution can be the right choice.
Exactly. It's also a question about simplicity and complexity, and yeah, you need to choose on your own.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I think we have time for last question, or maybe not.
I think maybe we should start wrapping up.
Yeah, we just wrapped it up. Okay, thanks everyone that you came. Yeah, this talk will be recorded in YouTube. Yeah, and we will.
What's the plan for the next community meetup?
Yeah, next one is coming up in another month. We have changed the time for it, so we are gonna do alternating times. This one was on 9 a.m. UTC. The other one is on 5 p.m. UTC. So basically make sure that you know that. Cool.
And it's going to be on the first Wednesday on the month.
Yeah, every first Wednesday of the month. All right, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.